So when it comes to pick a character in the beginning, it's a little bit hard because the game is a bit deceiving. It doesn't show you all of the stats you need to know about the characters, and it also doesn't show you how they can be used in the endgame. For example, we need to go through three major differences between the characters. First of all, let's speak about the guns. Now, it's a little harder to explain the guns per se, but let's just say that the biggest and the strongest weapon you can equip currently in the game is the grenade launcher. It doesn't do 1000 damage, it does a lot more than 1000. Plus it has AoE, but yeah, it basically does a lot of damage, more than it says over here, and it can be used to destroy even medium X, plus the smaller variants and all of the other soldiers. This is the strongest weapon. The weakest one are going to be the pistols or even the SMGs. The SMGs are pretty weak, but they can kill some enemies pretty fast. Also, you have to think about the rigs, because that's also going to be a big selling point for some of the characters. Meaning they have different stuff on them, so we have to explain this a little bit better. So you see these icons, if it's S, M or L, that means you can put stuff in it, so that means you can hold more stuff and heavier stuff. If you see the gun icon over here, the pistol icon, that means you can equip broken guns over there to either sell or repair to use for yourself later. Now the game does have a lot of unique guns that you cannot simply buy and use over and over. You'll have to find them, repair them, and then you can use them in the raids. So probably this will become much more important later. For now it's not so important, but there are definitely some cool weapons you can only find and repair. And the second over here means it's a container or an open storage, whatever you want to call it. This means you can equip water over here that you find in a raid, but it also means you can equip certain skills, like for example the tactical camera, the IED, the turret, the red light, and some of the other stuff. More importantly, you can have the pneumatic jump over here. So the rigs are actually a bigger part of the game than you think. They're actually sometimes even more important than the characters themselves, because for example, this rig over here, the pack mule, as you can see, it only has one slot to equip something, which means you'll equip the pneumatic jump most likely. And that means you can loot a lot, but it also means you can bring a lot of ammo, a lot of consumables, a lot of supplies into the raid. So don't just think of it as what you can take out of the raid, think of it also as what you can bring. For example, bringing a lot of medkits, bringing a lot of drills, and some adrenaline steams, ammo, and some other stuff. It's kind of heavy and it's hard to transport, so it will be more important for certain characters. So as you can see, this one has 3 slots to equip stuff, meaning you can bring back explosives, water, gacha crates, and some other stuff, which can be useful, but again, it more or less depends on luck or how you play the game. As you can see, there is no perfect grid per se. The rigs are going to be tied to the character. So for example, the standard one might just be a gun, thingy over here, and a large container. Also, you have to think of it in the context of high quality containers. The high quality containers allow you to loot more stuff. As you can see, there's no perfect rig. If it doesn't have the weapons, well, you might think, well, that's okay, I don't need the weapons either way. Well, yes and no. Because the weapons you can repair can be super useful. Sadly, it does take a long time to repair them currently, but I think this will change over time as well. So you can get the big sniper rifles with 50 caliber or even 20mm ones. Now I played a few raids with this gun, and then, well, you can kill the entire map except for medium stuff. You can also kill the exos and some of the smaller stuff as well, but it's a little harder. Plus this makes so much noise that the whole map will know where you are, but it's fun to use. RPD is also one of the weapons you can repair, plus you can also repair the grenade launchers if you find any, which would be a little cheaper than just, you know, buying them. And again, in the end game you'll use a lot of resources anyway, plus these ones, plus this one, so repairing weapons will be a little more important later on, especially if you're going to play solo. It does take a long time, but again, the game is kind of a slow burner anyway. We've spoken about rigs, guns. Now let's speak a little bit about survivability, which is kind of like how the characters influence the game. Now let's take the old man for example. He's trained in rifles, shotguns, heavy rifles, and pistols, which means he can more or less use all of the guns except grenade launchers. And even in grenade launchers he can use the smaller ones, which is just a one shot and then he needs to reload it. It's kind of weak, but at least it's there. See this thing over here? You can also get a ton of them just by completing a quest which is related to drones. So he can use sniper rifles which are 50 cal, 20mm, all of the cool stuff except for grenade launchers. He has average health and speed, which is not really saying much, but it's very deceiving. So the game has two stats that are not shown. One is walk speed, and the other one is sprint speed. So the more you prestige a character, the more walk and sprint speed he can get, but there's a catch. So for example, these two characters over here, the final ones, will have a very low walk and sprint speed, and even at max prestige, you'll not be able to sprint faster. It seems like sometimes they're just crawling. So he has good HP. It says average, but trust me, it's very good HP. He has good speed, good walk speed, good run speed. He has good containers, good rigs, but he has to unlock them sadly, which is kind of the deal. Some of the characters will need a lot of stuff to be unlocked, so they are fully useful. Other than that, he's great for support missions. As you can see, I like to run him with the SVD and the Scar 50 cal. Means he's kind of like a jack of all trades, but he cannot kill mechs, he cannot hide very well, he cannot run very well. So I recommend every new player plays with the old man. We'll do a little bit of a recap a little bit later. The Scav girl, she's kind of like the opposite. She's very good with running. She has stamina training and sprint speed. But she can only use SMGs and pistols. Well, I think pistols are kind of weak right now. Maybe later they'll become better. She can only use the max of rig called the equip and gunner rig, which is kind of like enough. Let me see. Let me see where that is. Yeah, I think I have to buy it. They're also very expensive, so you'll not be able to interchange scavengers as often as you would like it. Some of the stuff as well, so yeah. It's going to be a very long haul game, and you need to think about what character you will start, what character you will use in the beginning, what weapon you'll use in the beginning because they're also leveled, and also what kind of general loadout you would like. So she's designed to sneak more. She also has a unique rig, the smaller one, which helps her sneaking. So this character is a lot harder to spot if you're using the small rig, and it's kind of like speed versus anything else. Speed, and you see the loot, you see the good loot, you run towards it. Also much easier to escape with this character, but she doesn't have a lot of health, she doesn't have a lot of other stuff as either. And see loot on HUD at twice the normal distance, which is very good, but lower health means you basically have no health to recover if you get shot, so you have to avoid combat with this character. So she cannot use the grenade launcher, she has very low health, she doesn't have big rigs like the other characters, so again, more of a specialist type, but this one is the perfect character type for people who like to play as a rat, you know, from Tarkov. So, it's more like observing, running towards the better loot, getting it and extracting. Maskman well is exactly the glass cannon you'd expect, more or less. Average health and speed, but his health is actually pretty low, his speed is pretty good. And more importantly, he can use all of the big guns. He can use the grenade launchers, the LMGs, and the smaller stuff as well, but he doesn't have much in terms of stamina training, as you can see. Another thing is, again, I'll not get into what rigs they can use and what they cannot use, because that's going to be a little harder to explain. So, it might seem like he doesn't have any good rigs, but he can equip them without needing the skill, so that's another big plus. You can use the heavy gun runner container without using the skills. So, again, this is not shown everywhere, so he can use some of the bigger rigs without needing a skill for it. That doesn't necessarily mean he'll use it, but use the grenade launcher, you need a lot of inventory space because the ammo is heavy, for the LMG and some of the other stuff, so this is definitely a glass cannon type of character. He can dish out a lot of damage, but he cannot take a lot of damage. He's also not very fast either, so keep that in mind. Shaman, well, Shaman is... well, it might make you believe he's kind of like the jack of all trades, but he's not really that good. You can only use SMGs and shotguns are currently very loud, but he has sprint speed, stamina, plus the carry capacity, which helps a lot. You can also use some of the heavier containers, but not the biggest ones, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think the Shaman is the weakest character, but some people will disagree with me because he has the skills needed to make the smaller containers carry a lot more, but at the same time you don't really use them that often, so again, it's a mixed bag. So I don't know, seems like Shaman will be the least played character. Tactical devices reveal more info used by the Shaman, which is good because it's kind of like a battlefield surveiller. surveillance, but at the same time he's not very nuanced either, so he's, how should I put it, he's kind of like a character that you play when you don't know what to play. Definitely the lowest amount of players probably try Shaman. Gunhead, not a lot of nonsense over here. He carries 2 guns, which is kind of like the main appeal of him. For example, you can have 2 guns equipped, but he cannot heal, so that's very, very important. He can use all of the contenders from the beginning, from what I can see, and there's another catch to this character. So he can use all of the guns, but he cannot heal. So that means he also has a lot of health, but he's also a big target. So in this game, you have to be a smaller target. The smaller targets are these 3, the bigger ones are these 3. So the Gunhead, think of it as a, not as a glass cannon, think of it as a tank. With Gunhead, you go into a raid, you kill as much as you can, you loot as much as you can, and then you get out as fast as possible. Because he cannot heal or be revived. So he's kind of like the solo type of character, but he cannot really stay very long in a raid. He has all of the firepower, but none of the sustain ability of the other characters. So, as an example, this guy, Old Man, can have the medical expert skills, which will allow him to heal more health from any consumable. So that makes him able to stay in a raid a lot longer than the other ones. So I don't know, I guess this would be a fun character, but he's so chaotic and so hard to use that most people who use him usually use him after they already have a lot of money stored up with the other characters. So basically, with these 3 characters you make a lot of money, and with these 3 characters you lose a lot of money. Also, Bagman, he's exactly what you expect. He's very, very slow. What they don't tell you over here in Prestige is that the more Prestige he has, he runs kind of like the same speed throughout the entire Prestige levels. But he gains a little more working speed, so he's super slow, he's a big target. He can use grenade launchers, he has carry capacity which he doesn't need, and stamina training which he kind of needs a lot more. And plus he has a lot of health, so he's very good for fighting, but once you start fighting with him you cannot really escape, so you have to finish either the fight or you die. So these are all of the nuances of all of the characters. So basically, as a new character, if you want the best of everything, get Old Man, and I recommend you play with Old Man until Prestige 10, and then you can switch to other characters if you feel like it. Scav girl is basically for the biggest rats in the game, meaning especially for solo players, because she's better with stealth. She doesn't really need a lot of stuff to get going, but she doesn't really have weapons. So this is the rat, the supreme rat play. This is the supreme Chad play, because he can use all of the guns, but his low health makes it a little harder to use, but once you understand how to use him, it's pretty good. So you don't really use the other guns either, so if you are going to use an LMG and a grenade launcher, yeah, you'll run out of space very, very fast. You'll use the bigger containers as well. Shaman, he's kind of like a support character. I recommend you play him as a support character. He has the best of all things, but he's missing either the high health or the bigger guns or the stealthiness, or I don't know. He's a very hard character to use, but probably people will like him because he has more things available in the beginning. But I don't know, he's kind of bad. And like I said, he's Havoc. You shock and awe tactics basically. You cannot really have, let's say, a stealthy character like this. You mainly pay him for the fighting and for, of course, for the firepower. But again, he's kind of like the hardest character in the game currently, because he needs a lot of prestige levels to make it work. And you need to fire a lot, because if you get shot, you cannot recover the health. Bagman, again, he's kind of like the character you bring as a friend. If you're going to play a duo, one of you has to be a Bagman and the other one has to be either Old Man, or I guess you can play as Maskman and Bagman together, or even Bagman and Gunhead, but it's going to be super hard to kind of have a playstyle that encompasses just pure firepower. So as a little recap, Old Man for new players, Scav Girl for rats, Maskman for glass cannon types of gameplay that they like, Shaman has a more tactical, slower approach that doesn't have anything specific in mind, just a slow tactical approach with a lot of looting, running, and kind of like the more complex playstyle that people don't really like to have. And had these shock and awe tactics that will mostly go in, destroy stuff, go out as fast as possible, otherwise you'll die to the lack of healing. That's why you have the guns, to use them. Bagman, he's It's kind of like the super soldier that doesn't really behave like a super soldier. When the big stuff arrives, he needs to go as well. So he's very good against normal soldiers, but he kind of loses his versatility in the long run, so he's a secondary character. So pick one of the three as a main characters and then one of the other three as a secondary character after you have, let's say, a few millions in the bank and you are comfortable with losing loot. Yeah, that's it.